Hi, my name's Robin Voller and I'll be your instructor in this course in developing better reading skills. I'm a graduate from Oxford University where I got a degree in English language and literature, and I've also got 20 years of teaching experience, teaching students of all ages to become more effective readers. Most of that time has been spent in the English secondary school education system, so that's students from the ages of 11 to 18, and that's primarily who this course is aimed towards. But if you're an adult who wants to develop their reading skills, then everything I say is also applicable to you too, and you can learn a lot from the course. Everything I'm going to tell you is based on my years of experience and observation of what really works to make students become better readers. So, what are you going to learn on this course? Well, first of all, let's tell you what you're not going to learn so you don't get any misconceptions. First of all, this course is not about decoding words on the page, by which I mean it's not a course for very young children who are just learning to read and they need something like phonics. There are other courses for that. There's no talk of phonics here. It's also not a course which is about speed reading. It's not for students who've just started college, they've got a ton of reading to do, they don't have enough time, they're overwhelmed, they want a series of hacks to help them get through the amount of material they've got to read. You can't find that in this course either, you can find those things elsewhere. So what is this course about and what will you learn? Well, the course is divided into 3 sections, and in the first section you're going to learn about why it's important to read in this modern world. And by modern world, I mean this ultra-modern artificial intelligence world we're moving into. And we're also going to think a little bit about creating great reading habits. And there's a reflective activity to do after watching the second video where you can think about and evaluate your reading habits as it currently stands and think about what you want to change. Then we move on to the second section of the course, where we're going to learn about how to be a more active reader. The word active is extremely important right the way through this course. There are plenty of people, teenagers are prime culprits of this, who they know how to decode words on the page, but when they sit down to read, they get frustrated or bored because they're just not really engaging with the text in a way that keeps them hooked. They might have to reread a paragraph a few times to understand what it's talking about. Their attention might drift. And after repeated experiences like that, they kind of give up on reading as one of their main hobbies and they switch to other and often less beneficial hobbies instead. This course is really directed at those people who want to get as much engagement and enjoyment out of their reading as possible. And so in the second section, we're going to learn what is called the active reading skills cycle. It's a process you go through to engage more actively with texts, and you go through it every time you read a chapter by chapter you go through. There are 4 stages in the active reading cycle. They are predicting, clarifying, questioning, and summarizing, and there's a video dedicated to each one of those skills, and there's a couple of videos to show you how to put all of the skills together into a cycle. There's also an active reading skills cycle reading log, which is a resource you can use as you go through the process of developing your active reading skills while you're reading these books chapter by chapter. The final section of this course is dedicated to more advanced reading skills, and I'm going to teach you what's called the active exploration process. And you go through this when you've completed a whole text. So you do the active reading skills cycle as you read the book chapter by chapter, but then when you get to the end, you do the advanced exploration process. But just like the active reading skills cycle, the advanced exploration process does have a method which you can go through systematically to delve into the deeper meanings of texts. Really, if I summarise what you're going to get from this course, then I would say the key things you're going to learn are the questions that you should be asking and answering in order to read texts more effectively. You're going to start to think a bit more like your English teacher thinks when they ask you questions, or even you're going to start to think like an English teacher themselves might think while they're reading a book. And you're going to feel much more confident about your reading because you're going to be learning how to engage with the text actively as you go through the reading process. This process can be used with both fiction and non-fiction texts. I mentioned going through the active reading cycle chapter by chapter before, which is because I really recognise that teens very often get into reading through fiction. But the process can equally well be applied to non-fiction. You could replace the idea of chapter by chapter by the idea of going through unit by unit or in section by section of a non-fiction text. So yeah, it's a course which can equally be applied to fiction and non-fiction texts, any kind of written text. One final thing, and I talk about this in a number of the videos too, is that it can be a really good idea to do this course with someone else helping you, say a friend or a family member, because then when you go through all the questions I'm presenting you with, and when you're reading a book asking and answering those questions, you can do it together. And that's really enjoyable, it's really fun, and it's great for learning too. But of course, if you want to do this course by yourself and you want to read independently and learn to ask the questions by yourself, then I'm going to give you all the tools you need for that as well. Don't worry, you'll be able to develop your skills independently just as well. I hope that sounds interesting to you, and I'm really looking forward to helping you to achieve your goal of becoming a better, more active reader.